Tempura is the crisp, golden, weightless taste the world calls the very soul of Japanese cooking. But it was not born in a Japanese kitchen. It was born from a Catholic rule about the days a man was forbidden to eat meat. This is its story. On a cold night in the winter of 1616, the most powerful man in Japan asked for a second helping. He was 73 years old, a warlord who had outlived every rival, crushed 100 years of civil war, and built a dynasty that would rule for the next 2.5 centuries. His cooks brought him sea bream, dipped in batter and fried in hot oil until it shone like lacquer. He ate more than an old stomach should. Within 3 months, he was dead. No blade ever reached Tokugawa Ieyasu. What finished the founder of the Tokugawa shogunate was a plate of fried fish. And here is the part the textbooks step around quickly. That fish was not a Japanese dish at all. Watch any samurai drama. The black ships in the harbor, the foreign priests in their dark robes, the world of Shogun. Tempura is already there, hidden in plain sight. The crisp golden batter that Japan now guards like a national treasure arrived on those same Portuguese ships. Say that out loud in a Tokyo restaurant and the room divides. Some will swear tempura is as Japanese as the rising sun. Others will admit, quietly, that its name was never Japanese at all. So which is it? Who really invented the most Japanese food in the world? Start with the word tempura. It sounds Japanese. It feels Japanese. But run it back 400 years and it dissolves into Latin. When the Portuguese reached Japan in 1543, 3 traders blown off course by a typhoon onto a small southern island, they brought 3 things that would change the country forever: muskets, crucifixes, and priests. Those priests lived by the calendar of the church. For times a year came the Ember Days, and through the long weeks of Lent, the faithful were forbidden to eat the flesh of animals. In Latin, the church called those seasons quacha tempora, the 4 times. During tempura, a priest could not touch meat. So he ate vegetables instead. Dipped in batter, fried in oil until they turned crisp and golden, a humble meal for a hungry man on a holy day. The Portuguese even had a name for it. Peixinhos da horta, little fishes from the garden. Green beans and slices of squash, battered to look like tiny fish, so a fasting man could enjoy the shape of what he was denied, a small kindness fried in oil, a way to survive the hungry weeks of Lent without breaking faith. Now picture the scene. Japanese cooks, watching these strangers from across the world fry vegetables on their sacred days, hearing the same word again and again over the sizzling oil. Tempura. Tempura. The season of fasting. And they did what good cooks have always done. They stole the technique, and they stole the word. Tempura. A Japanese national dish, named after a Catholic law about the days you are forbidden to eat. And tempura did not travel alone. The Portuguese left a whole pantry behind them, hidden inside the Japanese language. The word pan, still used for bread across Japan today, is Portuguese. So is castella, the honey sponge cake of Nagasaki, named for the Kingdom of Castile. Conpeito, the tiny star-shaped sugar candy once so rare that a warlord accepted a box of it as a gift from a foreign priest, is Portuguese too. An entire generation of Japanese sweets and staples arrived in the holds of those black ships. But of all of them, only one would rise to become the pride of the nation and confuse the world about where it came from. It began in one place before it spread anywhere else. Nagasaki. In 1580, a Christian lord named Omarasumi Tada handed the port over to the Jesuits outright, and for a few strange decades Nagasaki was less a Japanese town than a European one. Church bells rang over the harbor. Portuguese drifted through the market stalls. And during Lent, the smell of frying oil rose from the mission kitchens and spread through the streets. This is where a foreign fasting dish quietly turned into a local one. Warlords like Oda Nobunaga welcomed the strangers and their trade, curious about the wide world arriving on their shores. For half a century, two civilizations met over gunpowder, gold, and fried food. Then the door slammed shut. A later shogun turned on the missionaries, crucified converts, expelled the Portuguese, and sealed the entire country away from the world for more than 200 years. The priests were gone. The churches were burned. But the frying stayed behind, the way a song outlives the singer. And in Edo, the roaring city that would one day become Tokyo, tempura shed its churchly past and became something loud, cheap, and gloriously alive. Vendors set up stalls along the riverbanks and fried skewers of fish in bubbling cauldrons of sesame oil, handing them hot to laborers and fishermen for a few copper coins. It was street food. Greasy, fast, eaten standing up in the open air, the fried chicken of its day. Oil was expensive, so a stall that could afford to fry drew a crowd, and people gathered just to stand near the sizzle and breathe in the smell of something forbidden turned ordinary. The dish the missionaries had brought to fast on had become the food a working city ate to feel rich. And yes, that same street food is what most likely killed the shogun. Ieyasu, careful his whole life, a man who ate plain barley and rice deep into old age, indulged one night in fried sea bream and never truly recovered. Historians now believe the heavy, oily meal aggravated a sickness already growing quietly inside him. But the legend stuck, because it was simply too perfect. The founder of an empire, brought down by a snack the foreigners had left behind. Over the centuries that follow, the greasy stall food was refined and refined again. Lighter batter. Cleaner oil. Each piece fried to order in seconds. Until tempura climbed all the way from the muddy riverbank to the finest counters in the country, where a chef today will train for 10 years just to learn how to fry a single shrimp correctly. And somewhere in those centuries, Japan quietly rewrote the recipe. The heavy Portuguese batter grew thin and lacy. Cooks learned to mix the flour with ice-cold water and barely stir it, leaving it lumpy on purpose, so the coating would fry into something almost transparent, a whisper of gold that shatters when you bite it. The foreigners gave Japan the frying pan. Japan gave the world a new kind of crisp. So here is the strange truth sitting on your plate. The most Japanese thing in the entire meal, that crisp and weightless golden tempura, began its life as a Catholic fasting dish. Carried by priests. Named in Latin. Fried first by homesick foreigners a world away from where they were born. Japan did not invent tempura. Japan did something far harder. It took a borrowed thing and made it so completely, so perfectly its own that the whole world forgot it was ever borrowed at all. That is not theft. That is the quiet genius of a culture that has always taken in whatever washed up on its shores and handed it back transformed. Lighter. Finer. Unmistakably Japanese. Which leaves one question worth arguing about. If a dish is born in Portugal, named in Latin, and perfected in Japan, then whose food is it, really? Is tempura a Japanese invention, or a foreign one that Japan simply finished? I go back and forth on it myself. Tell me where you land, Japanese or Portuguese, in a single word below. And if this story surprised you, subscribe to Tales of Old Japan, where we keep digging up the hidden history behind the things you thought you already knew.